Mr. Samuel Smith, Mr. Hefty, Cat Stevens is here to see you.
I didn't know that Cat Stevens was coming in today.
Aren't you excited? He's one of the finest singer-songwriters of our generation.
Yeah, I agree, but I've heard he's been a little spiritual lately.
He's been on a journey of self-discovery to find inner peace. And I, for one, am just so excited to hear the lyrical tapestry he's about to weave for us.
Oh, I'll bet.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum, David. Assalamu alaikum, Paul.
Assalamu alaikum there, Cat.
David, it's actually, his name is Yusuf Islam now, which is a whole new thing.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Paul.
Oh, that's groovy, man. Don't you think that might be a little confusing for the audience? Hurt your record sales? Have you thought of Yusuf Stevens? Or Kat Salam, even? One of those names could be far out, man.
Yusuf, I'm sorry. We know you've been working on some very, very exciting new material, and I think I speak for all of us here when I say that we'd like to hear you sing it right now.
Yes, I'm quite delighted to play some of the songs I've been working on lately.
By all means, let's hear the next tea for the Tillerman.
Or better yet, the next coffee for the camel jockey.
What is wrong with you? He can hear you.
I thought we were saying.
He can hear you right now.
Nonetheless, this next song is called Cherry's Broken. It's now time to make a change. On your knees, pray to the east. You don't know that's your fault. There's so much in the Quran. Find a girl, settle down. You're 19 and she's 11. Look at her, she's a kid and she is napping.
Yusuf, hold up, please. That was absolutely horrible.
Great.
Did you not like it?
No, it was great. It was just, my problem is I think that a Quran is probably something you draw with, and it sounded a bit too much like father and son.
And it was about marrying an 11-year-old girl. So.
Yeah.
I suppose that's a fair comparison, seeing as they're both about bringing children into adulthood.
Yeah, let's just go ahead and put that in the maybe pile.
Right there.
The one we'll maybe look at eventually. And let's just go ahead and see what else you might have on the menu that's less like that.
Yes, you've broken the laws of Allah. Sharia, Sharia. Baking and kissing another man. Sharia, Sharia. And now you're gonna lose your hands, lose your tongue and lose your glands. And after you lose your glands, you'll be stoned to death. God is grand.
Stop.
Is there a problem?
Yes. No one wants to hear the person that's saying Peace Train sing about sawing people's genitals off.
David, please. Look, I think what he's trying to say is the melody is beautiful. It's just, I think the audience is more used to a softer, more peaceful side of you. So maybe we could merger the new personality and the old one. Maybe take out the sawing off genitals and the old guy and merger it.
But the punishment fits the crime. Mashallah. They must all eat from the tree of Zakum.
Of course they would, but it's just, I think if there's a way to bridge the old you and the new guy, it's going to be better for your sales. Can we hear maybe a mix? What do you say?
Yalla. 'Cause Ayatollah Khomeini issued a fatwa, a jihad on Salman Rushdie, death to the infidel, and praise be to Allah.
You know, Yusuf, maybe the market isn't quite ready for your new sound just yet.
Yeah, maybe you could come back in 30 years when you've realized all this is crazy.
Well, it's a shame then, isn't it? Couldn't work anything out with you boys. Well, cheers, mate. Death to America.
Thanks, Yusuf. Death to America.
What the hell was that?
I don't know. You were right, okay? You're right.
Usually am.
Do you have anybody else for sing today?
Gary Glitter.
Oh, thank God. There's a guy who really has his act together.
Yeah. Very solid chap there.
Hey, it's Normal World. Welcome back, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Who are you?
I'm Dave Landau.
Oh, really? That's cool.
That's me. Who are you?
I'm Quarter Black, I think.
What?
That's what they tell me.
QB? My
Yeah.
man QB? And who's that gal?
What's up?
Is it Angela?
Wait, your name's
Me. I was Angela.
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 That's right. Thank you.
Thank you for coming back today.
It was a toss up.
I
It always is. It always is.
I know. Well, and anyway, well, you do it up.
You know what? Yeah. Hey, thanks everybody for coming and watching the show. Provides me great opportunity to have people like Chris Gore come on in, the legend,
Thank you.
now good friend.
Yes.
I'm going to go out and say that publicly.
We have
We're
hung
good
out. I was with you in Vegas once, and you were barely able to stand.
This is accurate.
That was a good time.
It's good to meet someone in Vegas. You always see them at their best.
right. And also great to meet you, Dave. Like this is, I've followed your work for years, and just awesome to just be here and just hang out with you and talk movies
Likewise.
and pop culture stuff.
And a fellow Detroit guy.
Right.
Likewise. And also, yeah, and I've been a fan of you since Attack for the show. So, yeah, welcome.
God.
So I'm really happy to have you on.
I'm honored.
Cool.
Thank you so much. I hope
it's awesome.
you will come back after that intro.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see.
Boy,
See
as
for
long-
sure.
Just make sure that people don't know you were in it.
Yeah.
Make sure there's a fatwa on our heads now.
Out there.
Oh my God. Because I was hearing it like before, when I was sitting in the green room listening to this, I'm thinking, those are not the words to those songs. I know those songs
Wait a second.
really well. Like,
This isn't accurate.
My mom loved Cat Stevens. Well, it was so fun writing it because he kind of walked it back recently.
did he?
Oh
yeah.
because he was like, "This is ridiculous. What have I been doing for 30 years?"
Oh my God.
He made all this beautiful music and great albums and like
Great. He was a great
Tillerman, and
artist.
then all of a sudden it was like, "I'm gonna quit and do this," and then
For 30
for
years.
30 years, and then was like, "No, I'm gonna probably stop now."
Yeah, and also just that music was used quite a bit. His Cat Stevens music in Harold and Maude.
Great movie.
Yeah.
Great movie. And then you're right. As soon as he did that, he kind of just disappeared.
Just go, and then I remember watching Almost Famous, and like one of the just a good scene in it is just when Kate Hudson's dancing alone and the wind's playing that he sings. It's just this good transitional piece of like this whole hippie movement is about to die.
Yeah.
It was
it's
like
on its way
very,
out.
like last moment of like whatever was left of that entire, that last bit of like, you took a private plane, you were with record companies, things were kind of magic, and then everything changed after that whole generation.
What was that made it change?
I don't know.
Common sense?
Not really. Best rap, hardcore rap was killer.
Well, that was like 10 years after that, I feel like.
That was from the 70s.
Late
that took
70s,
place.
right?
Yeah, and they were from Taylor, Michigan, the made-up band in it. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, was it Fever Dog? Something like that.
Something like that. It's sort of like, to me, whenever a rapper dies in the news, that is the first time I've ever heard of that rapper.
Like Lil Tay.
Yeah, like Lil Tay. Yes.
It's by design.
Yeah. It's bizarre. And the names, I'm like, never heard of this person. People are mourning online. It's like a big deal. And I am just now hearing about this. But the Lil Tay story got a little weird.
Yeah, it got a little weird. So
Twist.
So Lil Tay, if you don't remember who Lil Tay is, I mean, why would you not? She's a legend of our time.
I had heard all about her.
Everybody knows everything about Lil Tay.
Yeah.
4 or 5 years ago, she was like an internet
I had no idea.
sensation kind of for a minute because she was like 8 and she was throwing down like diss tracks on people and flaunting all of her millions of dollars that she had, and she was buying Bugattis and all this stuff. Do we
Just
have a
cool
clip?
when you're
Play a
8.
clip.
We do have a clip.
If you don't remember.
Bitch, I just bought a Lamborghini. Y'all bitches can't afford this shit, okay? I'm only 9 years old, but I'm the youngest flex of the century. Me and my boy Jake Paul out here flexing on these broke ass haters. Tell 'em what's up, Jake. Bitch, I just bought a Lambo. I'm the youngest flex of the century, and I'm only 9 years old. What are y'all doing with your lives? Y'all only hating on me because y'all broke and jealous.
Clearly. Broke and jealous.
She's got to be kidding, right? Like, I think they're just his Lambos,
Well,
right?
yeah, it's not.
Just went to a garage. I'm going to bring my son to start doing that.
Yeah, dude. I think your son would be great at that too. He's really good at dissing
He's
people.
really funny at stuff. So
You
yeah, I
should
might
do
just
that
have
at
him
his
do
next baseball game. Is you guys
Yeah,
just
Yeah, just start, instead of even batting, he's just staring
I
at
don't
the
even need to
picture.
bat up here. Y'all bitches don't even know how to throw.
That can't be
walks over.
real. That can't be real.
Yeah, she's got to be kidding, right?
Right. That's got to
She's
be a
only
joke.
nine.
I think it's like her and her brother made this kind of viral thing go on, and she got all these people like Jake Paul, which was big at the time, and I mean he's still big, but
It's so funny.
bringing all these people that
I
are like
wanna
really
die.
trash people all together. Well, she stopped having notoriety for a while, so of course she
Right.
dies. And that's what
Right.
gets everybody to talk about her
Classic.
again. Classic move.
Yeah, I mean,
Then
she's
3 days
14
later.
and lost all that notoriety.
What is she going to do?
14, I didn't even have dreams.
Well, maybe it's a good PR move to die as a rapper, right? I mean,
Right.
couldn't you just fake your own death and then reap the profits of your,
And come out as not a hooligan, but a hologram.
right?
Yeah.
Tupac
Release
does.
like a resurrection.
Could be like a VR
album.
Yeah.
Well, hey,
38 albums come out after you're dead called
If you're
Machiavelli.
if you're concerned why we're talking about this flippantly, it's because she's not actually dead. Turns out she's not really dead. So
No one saw it coming.
Nobody saw that coming. She's
Apparently she
totally
got
alive.
hacked. Because who would hack? Who for what purpose?
And her social media people swear it was not them.
Oh, well, we could take their word for that.
Oh, that's not a phone. That's a whole bunch of money. I thought it was a big
You
cellular
don't know.
phone.
You can't relate. Because you don't make that money. You don't make that cheddar
I
BS.
don't make that money. Oh, man. You're from Detroit.
Yes, yeah.
So I wanted to discuss that. And you lived in the hood when it was hood.
Oh, yeah. No, I was robbed like 3 times when I lived in downtown Detroit.
You lived in Cass Corridor.
Well,
By
sort
little-
of
like little
off the
Tays?
Cass corridor. Yeah.
Little Tays all came up and robbed you.
Well,
You
it was
can't really
weird.
say like off the Cass Corridor like it gets nicer a block over.
I lived in this like loft space that was above a small business that never opened.
Yeah.
And so I was on the second floor, and there were bars on the second floor, but there weren't bars on the third floor. And that's where they broke in and stole. The last time they robbed my place, I lost everything I owned. It was bizarre, but it was weird. Like I sort of like learned all the bad lessons. I mean, in terms of just like how to avoid crime, which is just don't do stupid things like leave valuables visible in your vehicle.
Yes, or anything over a quarter, or any penny, anything, because they know it's in there.
Right.
Yes.
Well, it's like an enticement. You go, oh, there's a penny. There could be more. And then break it in.
Could leave books in my car. That was the only thing where I could just leave books visible in my car, and it would not get stolen. But yeah, I literally, after the third time, lost everything I owned, had to move into my mother's basement. Actual story.
Oh,
And yeah.
I'd feel good
Man.
though leaving Cass Corridor and being like, "Mother, will you please have me back? I'm so scared."
I was a kid back then. I didn't know what I was doing. I was a kid. Like, I mean, it was like you could get a cheap place in Detroit and you could probably still get a cheap place in Detroit.
There, it's skyrocketed. There,
Has it?
Oh my goodness! Right
Really?
where you're at, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Where you were at, it's very expensive now.
Oh wow.
There's like high rises, flats that are very pricey, like in the hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars.
Do people actually live there?
Yeah, like even when I was like at Second City, there was like, this is a hotel you can live at for $55. You're like, oh, for the night? They're like, no, for the month. Like, that's what it was, And now it's, but yeah, my friends would rent houses in Detroit. It was like $300 a month.
What?
Yeah, I was in a situation like that before that place that got broken into. I lived in the maid's quarters of what was a mansion that was like broken up into different spaces, and it was cool. It was like cheap, it's like $200 a month.
Yeah,
it was my first place. I think I was like 19, and it was awesome.
What do you think? Like right now, Detroit could be a good place for people to kind of build up. I know they do that with a lot of those kind of, they gentrify it. Millennials move in and they like improve the area. Is that?
Oh, there's 600,000 people
with
with room for 12 million. So yeah, if you want,
like
build,
that's the place.
Right.
That's your place.
Yeah, that could be a thing, but yeah, I don't know. Between the crime and the weather, I think I'll take a pass on that.
It's the worst city, and I still live there, and I hate it, and I live here. But it's like it's the construction, everything, the way the politics. There's nothing good that happens. It's a shame, but it's true. It's a rough place.
Dave, I hate to agree with you, but I agree with you. And I have family back in Michigan.
Yeah.
And I love to go back there, and I love to visit, and I love to come home. So
exactly.
Yeah.
You drive 3 feet and you're like, oh, construction again? Oh, a pothole? Like people can think we're complaining, but they don't understand construction like Michigan.
Right.
Every day I was in the Comedy Castle last week. I live 40 minutes from it. It took me 3 hours every day.
Wow.
Because there was just something that happened based on construction or a pothole that killed someone.
Is it corruption? That's what obviously,
Detroit
right. Everything is corruption in Detroit, but is that like specifically because of the corruption makes the potholes not get fixed, and they're like constantly funneling money into that?
Yeah, I mean, they just have this endless budget where they're like, we got to get next year's budget. We got to pretend we got to move this freeway over, and then we got to move it back over here. I'm not joking. They've done it with 275.
No, it's crazy. But also, they've always been kind of a corrupt city when it comes to their politics. But I always loved Coleman Young. Do you?
Oh,
remember Coleman Young?
Coleman Young.
He was just so outspoken. He just didn't care. And I remember he said once a quote from him where he's saying like, "Hey, we need guns in the city to protect ourselves from the hostile suburbs."
Yes.
And I was like,
wait, what?
All right, well,
that was his thing. That's why White Boy Rick went to jail. Yeah, it was largely because White Boy Rick was dating his niece, and he was like, we're going to pin this whole thing on him. And then the FBI was like, we can't say that we've been giving cocaine to this kid, or else they're going to know we've been putting coke into the hood.
Right.
And they were like, you're on your own, White Boy Rick.
Too bad. Cut him off.
My Uncle Gary lived 2 blocks over. My cousin was good friends with White Boy Rick.
You're that close to it.
Where, yeah, it was like, that's why the guy went to jail, was through corruption. Do you think that a 13-year-old white kid, 14, 15-year-old white kid was running the hood of Detroit?
Absolutely.
It's a nonsense story. And he went to jail for like 40 years, 30 years.
Wow.
No, it was always like that.
He's a scapegoat.
Yeah. No, it's always been corruption. I mean, there's always been a large part. I mean, Gil Hill, do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. And Hoffa, of course.
Yeah.
That was a great... That's
fun.
one of the greatest hits of Detroit right there is Hoffa. Like, seriously, greatest hit.
Oh, yeah. It's just the
all-timer.
Well, I love how every year they dig up a driveway. They're like, we're pretty sure we got a tip he's under your driveway. And then they're like, oh, he's not there. It's like, yeah, because they threw him into scrap metal and just burned him with a car. That's where he is.
What was the restaurant that all of the people got sick and died from? They got botulism from, it was bad Mexican food. So...
I go to Michigan for my Mexican food.
Yeah.
You're going to want to. We're the furthest north you can get.
Yeah.
We're the most away from Mexico as an American. Well, Mexican town in Detroit, pretty good.
It was good, and Greektown was good too. And then there was...
it's all anal.
Places like Bill Knapp's, which no one will know except for you and I.
Yeah, have you never been to Bill Knapp's?
No, I've never been to like Michigan proper. I've been to the outskirts of it, but I've never been to like...
Bill Knapp's was quite a restaurant. A Ponderosa.
all of that stuff. Now that we've gone through pretty much all the stuff, the Michigan, and I don't know,
impressing no one with it.
impressing no one, everyone. It's God, yeah.
We did have but Gil Hill, he was the chief of police in Beverly Hills Cop.
Right, I know that.
Yeah,
That's
'cause
my
they were-
only connection.
They're like,
I
we
know.
can't find an actor who's as insane as this guy.
And he was perfect
And
in
they're
that.
like, and this guy kills
Perfect.
people for real.
Absolutely perfect. Like the way he would just dress him down, perfectly done,
Axel.
just over the top.
And aren't they talking about doing another Beverly Hills
Yeah,
Cop?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah, they should.
It's probably shut down because
They made some like made-for-TV movie with
his son.
It was Brandon T. Jackson.
Yep.
But it never saw the light of day. So yeah,
Probably
I don't
for
know.
the best.
I'm up for anything with Eddie Murphy coming back. 48
Yes.
Hours and Beverly Hills Cop. There's so many good movies he's
Mm-hmm.
made, and he is so trashed by a lot of people, and he shouldn't be.
I've been
I agree.
itching for a renaissance, Eddie Murphy renaissance, and then they came out with the Coming to America 2, and I heard it was not great. Did you watch it?
I did. I laughed.
What did you think? You thought it was funny? Okay.
It wasn't horrible. I mean, it was what
I
you
didn't want to tarnish
The
that.
problem with all movies now that are sequels and remakes, it's like, hey, remember what we did in the first one?
Right.
Yeah, that's every movie.
Yeah, that's what I can't stand. Like, but it was still made me laugh because it's Eddie Murphy. So there were parts, and Arsenio Hall was back too, and he was really funny in the first one too. But yeah, it wasn't a masterpiece. But Coming to America is a great movie. It's hard to put a sequel on that.
That's true.
But
Yeah,
Beverly Hills
one of the
Cop
perfect
2
movies.
is a good movie.
One of the perfect movies that I think is Coming to America, and then Beverly Hills Cop 2. Some people could say is better than the first one.
But it's like that Chris Farley sketch. Remember that? Remember that?
Remember?
Remember
Yes,
that?
remember.
That's all of this stuff now. I mean, you know, it's bizarre in the summer to see like the two biggest movies aren't that Barbie and Oppenheimer, right? That's just weird. And Oppenheimer is like a movie that you wouldn't think would even be released in the summer. You know, a Oscar baiting kind of biopic about the most important,
Very long.
long. It's like 3 hours. It's got all those things. We're going to win Oscars,
Yeah.
but let's drop it in July, right? And it's doing really well. It's shocking.
Yeah, and you
Against
have like
Barbie.
you have the star power, but not the lead as the star power. Really, like he's a good character actor,
Yeah.
but it's still not that star power lead. Well, because you got into making your own magazine about film.
Yes.
Yep.
And this was in the 80s.
This is in the 80s in Detroit. I dropped out of college because first of all, I don't recommend. I'm not saying that this is a pathway anyone should do, but I realized I was working 3 jobs and I was paying my own tuition to go to school, effectively to pay to buy really expensive books, read the books, and regurgitate the contents of the book to the professor to prove that I had read the book.
Right, as you do.
Or I could just drop out of college and just read all those books. So I went on this sort of like, I went on a trip to Los Angeles. And I said, I want to go to the campus of USC because that's where George Lucas went to school. That was the school I wanted to attend. Couldn't afford it. But I went to the campus bookstore and I bought every book that I could afford. And then I wrote a list of all the names of the books and authors. And I read all the books because I thought, if I can't afford to go to this school, I'm going to read all the books that these rich assholes are reading who can afford to go to this school. Yeah. And I printed out a copy of this list and I gave it to my friends at Wayne State University, where I was going in their meager film program. But I just got sick of it. And I said, look, I can spend money on college, or I can just start my own movie magazine as an excuse to like meet my heroes. And eventually got to meet people like John Waters and David Lynch, Spike Lee, the filmmaker, Jim Jarmusch, the indie filmmakers at the time that I revered. So, and it was like, this thing I'll do for a while and then I'll go off and make movies. Well, cut to, 30 plus years later, I'm still doing Film Thread. It's a website, but that's kind of how it started. I just was, I dropped out of college because I just thought it was like, what am I doing? I feel like I'm wasting my money. This would not work perhaps if you were trying to be a brain surgeon. Don't recommend the
Right, yeah, that wouldn't work.
Practice.
Maybe.
But I don't know
a good side hustle on vasectomies.
right.
I mean, look,
It takes 5 minutes.
it's a total botch job, but you won't have kids again.
Yeah. But yeah, no. So that's kind of how I basically started Film Threat, was just like being just sick of, being spread too thin, paying for college, and then being spread too thin, paying to start a small business that barely made any money.
What a perfect time to do that.
Yeah, no, like
in
right
the
before
late
the
80s, right
boom of
before the
independent
boom.
Right.
The absolute boom. Like that's
Because I was about
trajectory.
10 or 11 when I got, I was in like 92 or 93 when I got into film. Like I was always into it because of my dad and into movies and stuff. But then when I got into like Tarantino and like all these other people that were coming out and Robert Rodriguez, because those were the first two that I knew about that were kind of different than David Lynch. And because I saw Eraserhead when I was 11.
Right.
Because it was out of curiosity because I kept seeing the box at a place called Mammoth Video.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't know what this is. And then I'm just watching it and I'm like, I still don't know what this is.
I'm very
but
confused,
I love
but
it.
I like it.
Yeah.
I love that film by David Lynch. Eraserhead is a classic. But I worked at this store that was infamous at the time called Thomas Video.
Oh, I remember that.
Oh, I lied about my age to get a job there. I was 16 years old, and they carried porn, and I just said, "Oh, I'm 18." They didn't check. They didn't care. It'd be a scandal now.
Right.
But like, I just was working there in high school. Eventually, they found out my real age, and they're like, "We don't care. You know, we it doesn't matter." It's
too late now.
So I worked there forever. That was like a job, and then I worked like just. You know, this is when teenagers would work at restaurants to make money or newspaper routes.
Did they not do
to earn
that?
a living. They don't do that stuff
I
anymore.
worked at a photo
Little
shop.
Tay. That's right, Little Tay.
Now they want to be YouTubers. I do not recommend that. Do not
do
recommend.
not recommend. It's
Do not
difficult.
recommend.
But I mean, that's a great story of like taking your passion and just going like, look, I don't have to do all the things that society tells me I have to do. I'm just going to go do them.
Well, the college thing,
Being
and it's
successful.
And now it's weird, like because college now is like, oh, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
Right. About how college is it really work? Does it really train you to do something you can make a decent living out? I think it trains you to do a traditional corporate job, but not necessarily to be entrepreneurial. And I was always entrepreneurial. I was always like, well, how can I do a hustle? Like, well, I'll have like 4 newspaper routes and then I can buy a car, you know?
Yep.
And the reason I wanted a car, most guys, you know, at the time, 16, wanted a car so they could go get laid.
Right.
I was like, oh, I want a car because I want to drive. I want to see every movie opening that weekend. So I need a car to drive myself.
Nerd.
I was like
wanna-
you. I wanted to drink, but I also wanted to
Yes, that
at
too.
a party. But yeah, I also loved movies. That was the thing. Is
Yeah.
we always wanted to go see every movie that was coming out all through high school. Same deal.
Yeah.
And I loved that.
My very first job was a movie theater. So that was it was like 16. I can drive and I can get to a movie theater every single day and get movies for free. Perfect.
I worked at an AMC for a day. I did not do well.
How did you get fired out of an AMC?
in AMC in Detroit? But like, okay, so Dave, did you remember like, you know, the drinking age in Canada was 19 at the time.
Oh, you bet I remember.
Yeah. So we would drive.
Well, not really remember.
We would take the tunnel, you know, to Windsor, where we would go see. Did you ever see the Windsor Ballet?
No.
Well, the Windsor Ballet was, truth be told, bottomless strip clubs.
Yeah.
So we would go there. We would call it the Windsor Ballet to make ourselves sound, you know, high class.
I take it back. I thought you meant a ballet. I've been to the Windsor Ballet many, many years.
Okay, now you know which Windsor Ballet I'm talking about. So we would go there, and then
That was the rite of passage.
right,
Yeah.
and then we would come back with cases of beer in our trunk because you know you could drink at 19. So
Well, that's what we would do. Yeah, same
Sounds like a
thing.
great environment.
It was great because you turned 19 and then it was your drinking birthday in Detroit and you would go across a bridge and it wasn't like the sober guy drove. It was like, you seem the least drunk. You're like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll talk to these border patrollers.
Maintain.
So yeah, see you had the Windsor Ballet experience, but no, that was fun. That was like I look back at like stuff I did in Detroit at the time. It's crazy. It would be, you know, like it would be nuts today.
I was talking on a podcast recently. I was talking to a guy in a metal band out in Flint, and we were just on my buddy Austin's podcast from Omaha, and we were discussing backyard death matches that were going on in Detroit that we would go watch. You remember those?
Oh my God,
and
yeah.
People they're like, "What are you talking about?" We're like, "Yeah, you know, like wrestling matches, but there's barbed wire," and it's like it was like kind of during ECW, but it was going on a lot longer than that.
Fluorescent lights.
Yeah, all that
smash over
stuff,
people's
glass,
heads.
and it's like just brutal and.
Detroit sounds like the most Mad Max place of all
was.
time. It sounds insane.
And I was always the one that would
Whatever you
go
wanna
into
do.
the ghetto to get like weed. Everybody would like puss out at the last minute, and I'd be the little guy. 15 is like, I'll go to the door, and I'm just walking up to the most dangerous in the most worst neighborhood, and they'd pull me in sometimes. And the stuff I would see, I was just like, wow, this is gonna probably hurt my brain at some point.
Well, this brings back memories of I spent a night in jail once. I got in a high-speed chase with cops.
Know the feeling?
Really?
I was 19 years old. I was going to this punk club called Todd's. Does anyone remember Todd's?
I've heard of it, but I never went there.
Todd's from Detroit, punk club. You know, bands would come there. It's a small place. I knew all the bartenders. I had a fake ID at the time. You could make a fake ID. This is how you made a fake ID back then. You take your ID, you get a phone book. A phone book was like, it's like the internet, but on really thin slices of wood. It was a giant paper thing. So you would cut out the number, literally get an X-Acto blade, cut out the number, and I would use a piece of Scotch tape and tape it over, and that's how I changed it. And I would get the list, sort of looking twice, side eye from the, whatever, you're going to give us money, we don't care.
Right.
So I was going with my friend Stefan Hoffman, and we knew there were certain liquor stores that would just sell us beer and didn't give a shit about ID. They didn't care. So I bought some, it was like Big Jug beer. I think that was even the name of it, Big Jug beer. It was awful. And because it was the cheapest, got it, and we're driving, and these guys pull up next to me, and they have baseball bats, and they're in like these white T-shirts. I think, oh my god, and we're dressed super punk rock.
This is like the Warriors.
Yeah, and it was like, oh my god, these guys are out to beat up some punks. They didn't identify themselves, got in this super high speed chase with these guys, literally white T-shirts and baseball bats. And I'm like, okay, they're gonna catch us. I can't do anything. I said, let's go back to Todd's. The security there knows us. They'll break up any fight. We literally just pull into the parking lot. They pull up and identify themselves as police officers.
Are you serious?
What?
They were undercover cops. And all we had done was bought beer at this liquor store, right? So, but the high-speed chase was probably a bad thing. Anyway, spent the night in jail. And I remember me and my buddy, Stefan, we go in, we're the only white dudes in there. And
Were you in Wayne County?
this is in Detroit, like.
Yeah, so you were in Wayne County, Jay.
Oh yeah.
You were like in the city.
Inner city.
Oh yeah.
Or you were in Coleman A. Young building.
Correct.
Oh yeah.
So we went there. They took us in a chain gang. They punched my friend Steven. They threw us in. Then they took us downtown to be processed. Why am I telling this story? I was here to talk about.
This is hardcore.
It's a fun story. Let's hear it.
I've never told this story like on a podcast. So then we go up in front of the judge, and I had like my hair was all sort of. I kind of tried to make myself look clean. I kind of like buttoned my shirt up. But when I went,
Your Honor.
when I went into the jail, they said, "Well, what are you in here for?" And we're like, possession of alcohol. Everyone in the jail just burst out laughing. Like, you guys are wimps, right? Nothing. We go up in front of the judge, and we got a year probation. But it was literally when I walked out of jail. I think everybody should go to jail once. I think it's a good.
Never
I think you
been
should.
to jail.
It was
Good on you.
the feeling of
Go
freedom.
down.
And we went to this horrible diner. I remember having a bologna sandwich downtown. It was the worst, awful, and it was the best tasting. It was so great. It's like that scene in Fight Club, where Tyler Durden like points the gun at the dude, and like it was like that kind of revelation.
Gave you a whole new look on life.
Whole new look on life. So yeah, so everyone should work fast food, a terrible job they hate, and go to jail. These are important life experiences that build character. Not getting a lot of likes on a TikTok video. Okay, no one cares.
Yeah, or
No reacting
so
to
famous.
emojis.
Yeah,
And so famous at 8, you have to fake your death at 14.
right.
No way to live a life.
Not a good
By
one.
the way, I did fake my death when I was in college to promote. Oh, I have pictures.
What?
I'll post the pictures. I've
I've always like romantically thought of like the scenario if I did that, I could sure wake up.
You were watching the classic Dead Man on Campus?
It was a total Tom Sawyer, Huck Finn type moment where, if you're familiar with the book, I don't know if they let kids read those books anymore.
Not anymore. They changed it.
But I mean, like,
Just Jim now.
so I did this photo shoot with a buddy of mine, and I did a fake. The cover of Wayne State University had the college newspaper, which was called the South End. And so I was getting good. This is pre-Photoshop, right? But I knew how to like with an X-Acto blade cut and kind of like touch.
You're doing
things
your
up.
own IDs.
Doing my own stuff. I'm doing a fake ID. So he took a photo of me, and I took like a jar of jelly, and I spread it on the sidewalk, took chalk, put it around my body, and I posed for a picture like me, like I jumped off a building dead.
Wow.
I mean, and it was in black and white, so it looked pretty real.
Yeah.
pretty real. And
You got some grain to it. I imagine
You get
it
away
was
with a lot of
authentic.
that.
yeah, and I did a thing, film student commits suicide. And then I wrote a fake story. I matched the font, which was great. I made a fake cover of the South End with a picture of me dead and then like this total fake story. Then I used that as a flyer to promote a film screening, a movie I was screening at the campus. And people showed up and thought that I died from this flyer that was pasted all over campus. I don't know, like I was always doing stuff that got me in trouble. And
I think there's something about that though. When you're an artist, you have that kind of like rebel mentality. Go off and do stuff that nobody else does, like fake your own death.
well, I'll send you the picture, Garrett, or I'll
Absolutely. I want to see that.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be shocked though, especially I don't know, and in that town, and even then, and I was even thinking of like the cops and stuff. Then, like I remember my brother's frat being busted up at Wayne State, and I just have like shotguns being held to my head by the cops,
Right.
And it's like they weren't even messing around. Like I didn't have a weapon. But it's like they just wanted to make sure we didn't run, and it's just like pointing at us. They have like dogs and stuff, and we're like, you don't have any drug. Like, but a lot of places did, And there's always something where that wouldn't shock anybody. It's like, yeah, he probably just jumped to his death. It's not.
Just go with it.
People don't flinch at stuff like that.
Well, it was always the thing, like I'm sure you had this experience where your parents are out of town, you got the whole house to yourself. And so that's the place where everybody goes and brings, do you remember this? Okay. Do you remember Olympia beer made by artisans? I'm sure it's still around.
Yeah, it's still
They
there.
had these things called Oli balls. Do you remember this?
I don't remember I know what they
ball?
look like. I know what they are, but
Right.
I didn't ever have one.
So they were like a mini keg that you could buy. You could just go into a liquor store. They were cheap.
Okay.
An Oli ball was like a bunch of beer, and it was like this plastic ball. And we would always get those for our high school parties, but they would get broken up by the cops. They'd see there were kids drinking underage. They basically just tell you to go home.
Right.
But so I didn't get a gun pointed at me. I'm trying to remember.
That was only at a frat. Like usually Detroit cops were decent. Like we'd go to this place
Yeah.
we called Angel Park in Detroit off Jefferson.
Yeah.
And it was just this place where like homeless people would like fish for catfish. Oh no. And we would just go there. It used to be an insane asylum right there. Yeah. And we would just go and we would just drink and stuff, and we would have kegs. And the second the cops pulled in, we'd go and hide them.
Right.
And then they'd pull in and be like, "That was good, guys. What was that?" That's about 38 seconds to get those kegs behind the tree. And we're like, yeah, they'd be like, "So you're gonna give us a beer? You guys are gonna act like jerks all night?" And we'd be like, "Oh, okay." And they tell us stories, and like 2 minutes into their stories, we're like, "Oh, this is why they don't care that we have beer."
Right.
They just saw hoarders all day. A real crime,
Yeah. But no, those were the days, man. Growing up in Detroit, it was weird. Like looking back at like, how did I survive like all that stuff? Like when my place got ripped off, even I tried to buy back the computer when they stole everything, because I had an entire issue of Film Threat magazine on this computer that was unpublished, lost forever. On this computer, I had a Mac SE30. Just for any of those keeping up with the tech porn, Mac SE30 was kind of cool at the time.
So you needed two guys to carry it out.
Right, yeah. Very heavy. But like, so I gave this guy, he's like, "Hey, I know where your stuff is. It's at the crack house around the corner." This was the local economy. It was like rip stuff off, trade it for drugs. So I said, "Well, look, I'll give you a couple $100. I just want the computer back. I don't care about, my TV or anything, whatever, that's replaceable. I need that computer back." So I give this guy $200, drive in this alley, let him off. He goes into the crack house. I'm waiting there. I'm waiting. It's a couple hours later. Sun goes down. It's completely pitch black out. I'm like, "Oh, I'm not getting my computer back. He just took me for a couple $100.
Yeah. You gave your money to a
That's
crack
a good
addict.
play.
Yeah, but it's a crack addict.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah.
He's like, "Yeah, I'll be right back with all your things."
Yeah, okay, kid.
Lesson learned, but I will say this, like, since I've come to Los Angeles, which now Los Angeles is, it's Gotham City where there's no Batman.
Oh, it's way worse than
it is
Detroit would
worse.
ever be, by far, yeah.
LA is the new Detroit. Not a thing to brag about. There's even like, as you take the 110 south.
I'd say worse.
Oh, it's worse.
Way worse, yeah.
As you take the 110 south to get to downtown Los Angeles, someone has painted LA is not a safe city. Big.
Yeah, I saw that.
Did you see
I saw
it?
that when I was leaving. I landed there first time. I was like walking around LAX, like, this is a horrible place. And then we got in the car. Gary came and picked me up, and then we drove through downtown LA, and I saw the entire thing. it just went on for miles and miles and miles of just like the worst neighborhood you could think of, every street.
It's third world. I mean, it's terrible. Now, fortunately, I live in Pasadena, which is part of LA
Day and
County.
night.
But Pasadena has like its own health board. So they're like, yeah, we're going to take some of these rules you're trying to enforce as suggestions. You know, so they weren't down with a lot of the stuff.
It's clean when you walk through Pasadena.
I was going to say that too. You
There's
can
not
feel
litter.
the difference. In LA, you can definitely feel there's no respect for your own area.
Right.
There's nobody picking up trash. There's no government that's picking it up for you. So nobody cares about it. And then you go to Pasadena and it's, oh, look, it's swept.
Well,
It's been power washed at some point.
only people from California will get this, but Pasadena is like the Orange County of LA County, if that makes sense. So it's much more conservative, blue collar.
Yes.
I don't know. I like living there, but man, LA is become the new Detroit. And I think San Francisco's, I don't know, I think San Francisco gets the Detroit of the Year award.
It is definitely Detroit. Detroit is not by far the worst.
Yeah.
Even in the Midwest. I mean, you go to like Minneapolis that I've been, like, dude, no. Like, I would way rather be in Detroit because there's less people.
Right.
Yeah, there's not enough people to cause that kind of a ruckus.
Why do you think
pretty
that
nice.
Detroit
And
gets the
also-
bad rap then?
Well, not now because Detroit's also against a lot of stuff that they allow in other cities like LA. So they're not going to allow just certain things to go down. Even when people were rioting, like there were a lot of like white suburbanites coming in the 20s to start riots. And you just have cops, like the black cops that are just like, hit them with the cop car. Like hitting skateboarders and stuff. I was laughing so hard. I don't care. You know, there's still an element of the Wild West there, which I enjoy. You know, it's a good part of that city.
And maybe that's why, like in Dallas, the riots were so bad because it was something so far away from what usually happens. Not to say that Dallas is a super safe place, but it's not at the level of Detroit is. So Detroit, when it happened in Detroit, they were like, Psh, this is like every day. This is not even the worst I've seen.
Well, I brought my son through Detroit the first time to my parents to the cemetery, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, was this whole place on fire? And he wasn't trying to be funny. He just was looking at the buildings because they're over by like Conner Airport. And it's like real rough, but that's kind of where my mom was from. She wanted to, and you get there and you're kind of like, I wish you would have gone anywhere else to be buried, Mom, because they're going to just take all your stuff one day. But you go through and he's looking and now he's 8, but he's asking questions about it because he kind of grasps it. And he's like, so what was the deal? Like he goes, somebody threw a brick into a cop car. And I'm like, yes. How do you know? And he's asking
He's piecing it together.
Yeah, like he's seen videos on it. And I'm like, well, it was race because he's got a good friend who's black. And they know that the like now they're learning about like
Which
history.
sucks. Which kind of sucks.
It
Like
does.
they have to learn about the fact that we hate each other.
At some point.
It's really, really sad.
And it's odd though because I just tell him like, look, things were different then. But I was bringing them through the city, and I go, but look what they're rebuilding. But I said, yeah, these were because there was a place that was selling alcohol after hours, and it was raided by police, and they didn't get along, and all of a sudden and I showed him a video of the whole place burning, and he's like, but how'd the fire start? Because he's still a little kid. He's like, you can't start a fire by throwing a brick through a window. And I'm like, let me tell you about Molotov cocktails.
well, son.
You know, but it's an interesting thing to see because there's such a rich history there. Because like I'm explaining to him like, you know, how everybody came up from different states to work for Henry Ford because it was the Industrial Revolution and like all this stuff that happened, and then what the race riots and the history there that you see it's a microcosm of what this entire nation is.
Well, a lot of it seems to have started there and then spread elsewhere. That kind of corruption and race division and all that seems to have.
I just don't see the race division there like there is in other places. It just I think we've been through it enough to where it was
That happened way before
growing up for me. Yeah.
Because when was that? When was like the severe race riots? It was like
60s.
Yeah, late
right?
60s, yeah.
67, right?
That
I think it was
happened way
67.
before, and then it trickled down to all these other places.
In 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah. But one thing I do just love from being from Detroit is sort of the no BS attitude. It's like, I like to say I have a highly tuned bullshit detector. So when I moved to Los Angeles from Detroit, it was like, oh, all these people in the entertainment industry are full of shit. They're all full of shit. They're not good at follow through. I mean, I would literally tell you I was going to do something, like I'm going to mail you this. I'm going to mail you this video. I'm going to send you this thing. I would then do the thing I promised to do. And it was like I performed a magic trick because everyone there is so full of crap. They're like people just saying, oh, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. It's like, are you going to do that thing? So I had this sort of like this Detroit attitude coming, from there to LA. And then that allowed me, I went like, and then they talk about the Midwest work ethic. That was me. Like, I mean, to this day, like I'm going to get something done. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and freaking do it. Whatever needs to be done, whatever it takes to get a project done through to completion, whether it's a book, a TV pilot, or, an independent film or a movie website, all the different things that I kind of juggle that, somehow cobble together a living. Like, that's the way. But like most people in the industry are just full of crap. So, and I'm mostly indie film spirit anyways. Those are the filmmakers that I prefer are indie filmmakers. Even George Lucas, whatever you think about George Lucas.
Indie.
He's an indie filmmaker. He is the world's most successful independent filmmaker who then sold his big property, Lucasfilm, Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark, to Disney that corporatized it and made it hot garbage.
The white slavers.
Which in that interview. I don't think you should have taken it back. It's just like the analogy makes sense.
If anybody it's Disney.
Yeah, it's man. So, but I just, George Lucas, when you look at even the way he conducted himself, he was like an independent filmmaker. And
of course,
my favorite filmmakers are indies like David Lynch, we were talking about earlier, among others, people that work outside the system. Sometimes they can find a way to, work with Hollywood, but the industry is going through this weird with the strike and everything.
Right.
It is going to be the Wild West.
This is the longest. Well, last strike was how long? It was like, it wasn't even a year, right?
It was
this
like
strike has
100
actually
days,
lasted longer.
100 days.
100
now
days.
we're in the 101st day.
Right.
And so it's starting to get, Billy Porter talked about he has to sell his house.
I saw that.
And I'm thinking, first of all, 3 months, you got to sell your house. Like,
what were you doing?
Dude, who's managing your money?
Yeah.
Where's
all that Cinderella money?
He had a weird look.
Billy Porter?
A little bit.
Yeah.
He's a fairy godmother,
He looked a bit like Willy Wonka.
The black Willy Wonka.
The black Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
The hat.
No, I saw a lot of that. Well, I think it's either going to come out of we don't have any money and we lied to stock traders. Andrew Schultz talked about that.
Yeah. Yes.
Or we have so much money that you're going to be very upset with what we've been paying you, but there's going to be no middle ground. But I'm more with Andrew
they don't have
Schultz's
money.
side. I think that the truth is because think about how much money you would have to create a blockbuster movie.
Yeah.
Right.
And now think about how they create 55 of them for streaming out of nowhere. It's them throwing away the money they're getting.
Yeah.
Well, Netflix was basically buying market share, which
100%.
made the studios nervous. They had to get competitive, and they overspent. And then additionally, the reality is not a lot of people are watching these shows. They've created too much content.
It's a facade. They've created a facade of popularity. And that's why they don't show you any of the stats, any of the numbers, because they go, look, everybody loves these shows, right? It's number one in our trending list. That means something.
Or they'll find a way to thread the needle to say something nice in terms of numbers. This is the first movie ever starring a you know what I mean? They'll come up with some BS statistic. Yeah. But I think what ultimately is going to happen with the industry, it's just going to shrink.
Yes.
The industry, it grew. And then the slivers of pie are just not there. It's going to shrink. You're going to see consolidation. You're going to see, MGM has a streaming service. MGM Plus. Did you even know this?
I was this old right now when I found that.
Right, exactly.
No too many. And they're going to go back to that indie kind of mentality, that energy of going back to cheap and what kind of story can we get across?
And good, where you go, this movie profited us $3.8 million. We made $3.8 million. We're happy.
Right.
Those days.
That's where genres like horror films, there's this movie that came out recently by these guys who are YouTubers.
Horrors are always pretty profitable too. It doesn't even matter. Yeah.
Yeah. Raka Raka, Talk to Me is the name of the movie. It's an Australian film. These guys have a YouTube channel that got banned a couple times because their stuff was violent.
They were doing backyard wrestling. You were talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those guys are great, and they actually already shot a prequel. This movie was made for under $5 million, which in the big picture of Hollywood is nothing, right? So, you know, and it's a really good horror film. I think you're going to see, getting back to basics, you're going to see movies like, you know, don't make a $300 million Thor movie. How about a $50 million Joker movie, which Joker made $1 billion, directed by Todd Phillips, by the way, an indie filmmaker who I knew back in the day when I was doing Film Threat. Oh yeah, he started the New York Underground Film Festival, and I distributed 2 volumes of short films from the New York Underground Film Festival when he was in college.
Yeah, when he did Hated and the Frat movie.
I distributed Hated.
Did you really?
Film Threat distributed Hated on VHS. So we did a whole thing on that. I started this. I don't want to get into it's too long to get this.
Yeah, we're about to run out of time. And I want you to come back as soon as possible.
Absolutely.
We have a minute left.
Todd Phillips, you know, I knew back then, he still, to this day, because I talked to him after Joker came out, like he has an indie film spirit. The guy thinks like an indie filmmaker. I know that I'll just say this without naming names, a lot more people than you think on Hollywood are more based.
I was going to say that.
Than they would care to admit. It's usually people like, not Mark Hamill, not
Obviously.
Mark Ruffalo, not the two Marks.
Marks.
But a lot of people in Hollywood are just more based.
I think it's just the sanity. It's the
Common
whole
sense.
goalposts have moved, the lines have moved, so the people that were like sane go, wait a second.
Well, and
what's
Bret
going
Easton
on?
Ellis pointed that out, like even
Yeah.
in New York and in LA, where he's like, well, my whole neighborhood voted red, and I'm the gay guy. You know what I mean? And he goes,
Did
"I
you read
voted
his
red."
book? What was it?
Which
White?
one? Oh, White's great.
It's great.
I've told everybody to read White. It is phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah, really great book. But I guess, look, I could sit here and wax nostalgic
Absolutely.
and talk about stories all day if you wanted me to.
I want you to come back because we are about to run out of time.
Okay, all right, I'll be
So
back.
we have to bring you back soon, please. Thank you so much for coming
Chris
in.
Gore, Film Threat. He has a YouTube channel, does stuff all the time. He has a great format where you put franchises on blast,
Trial.
on trial.
We
And
just
you have it
did-
all set up like it's a trial.
Right.
It's brilliant. Please go watch that. Film Threat.
Thank you.
And you can
coming
see
on, man.
me.
You.
I mean, interrupt that. That felt
Where-
rude.
no,
I was
dude.
trying to. I didn't. I heard.
Hey, bro.
Sorry. Thank you for
It's
coming
all
on.
about you, Dave.
It's all about you.
All about Dave. I got
a star.
this Hill documentary last night, so I wore the shirt. It was pretty good. You should look it up. First hip hop group, from what I understand, to have a star on the Walk of Hollywood fame.
Really?
I didn't know that. Barrett esophagus. I'll be back at Zany's Comedy Club in Rosemont, Illinois, August 18th and 19th. That's all I have to say. Oh, and you can get my special, A Prison 10. That's why I'm putting it up.
Hey-yo.
It might not be up for much longer unless you own it, then you have it forever. But you can go to aprison10.com and get it while supplies
I
last.
want to get that DVD set. You got a box set with like behind the scenes stuff and commentary? You got commentary?
No, it's a the whole thing's a commentary.
I have commentary on my DVD, Attack of the Doc. Go to Attack of the Doc. That's doc.com. It's a documentary about G4 TV and Attack of the Show. You already bought a copy, which I probably would have given you anyways.
I'm gonna buy a copy.
I'll give you a copy.
I
Dave.
want to buy. I want to support.
All right.
It's a brilliant documentary. If you-
But it's also, I mean, it is about Attack of the Show, G4 TV, and kind of this golden era of nerd culture. But it's a lot about what we can't do on TV now, is sort of a thread within the doc. And don't blink, Garrett's in the film.
Ooh,
go.
yeah, get a little
Blink.
5-second frame.
Might be about 5 frames.
Yeah,
You're in
it. Was awesome. It was an honor. Made me feel really cool. Also, kind of sad.
Yeah, this one's a little more.
Friend of the show, Keegan. If you watch the pilot, he was in the AA meeting sketch. He was in the demon rape sketch.
He was also he was wearing the
He was the intern.
Trainee.
Trainee. That's right. Correct. Sorry, we got to get our own lore right.
Yes, his go ahead. Sorry.
His sister passed away recently, so they have a GoFundMe, and we wanted to see if anybody cared enough and wanted to take a look at it and support their family. They're kind of they're reeling right now from it, and it's a friend of ours. It's a friend of the show. So
Yeah, please, if you can support, do. If you can't, we understand, but please do if you can.
So thank you everybody for watching the show. Again, 60. I think we're almost at 70. We're getting there. We're moving
We're building.
on.
We're steamrolling.
Thank you everybody that's watched the show. We appreciate you. Thanks to Chris Gore. Thanks
Thank
to
you.
Dave. Thank you, Angela.
Good night.
Good night.
Mr. Samuel Smith, Mr. Hefty, Cat Stevens is here to see you.